Honda. I have no idea why I've got such a soft spot for the brand. Probably too much time spent in Civic Type R hot hatches during my misspent youth and my misspent middle age, come to think of it. But the company's got a really solid engineering reputation, so anything it brings out is usually worth a look. And the company has been busy. This is the all-new CR-V. Now this comes with a plug-in hybrid powertrain, and it's particularly popular with people who wear cardigans. This is the ZR-V, that also comes as a hybrid, and it's supposed to appeal to younger buyers, which is handy when the people that buy Hondas currently are apparently all over 60 years old. So that's a bit of a one. But the one we're interested in, obviously, is this, the Ny1. Now this is Honda's first mainstream all-electric global car. So let's take a look. Business first, please do like and subscribe and all that good stuff, because if you visit us at electrifying.com, you will find there's always something interesting going on. Now I hear you. The Honda E was a pure electric car, but Honda reckons that was a little bit niche and Europe only. So this is in fact their first global mainstream electric car.
It's a similar size to something like an HR-V, maybe a little bit smaller, which isn't a big surprise because it actually shares a platform. But Honda says it was always the intention, and the Ny1 gets a bespoke electrified version of those bones. This isn't a conversion of a car that should come with an engine, it's more like an electrified twin.
It's important because it's a mainstream electric car that should help Honda meet its upcoming emissions targets. Also, this is a car that should kick off Honda's programme of having about 30 battery-powered vehicles globally by 2030. So what we get is this really quite handsome, if a tiny bit conservative, small crossover that in reality, now that I'm stood next to it, is about the same size as something like a Hyundai Kona. It's got a really nicely chiselled front end, quite big slabby sides with this big feature line that runs all the way along the car, and then it ends in a kind of neat but conservative tail with a full width light bar. The interesting thing here is, now that I've seen it in the metal, I actually think this car is quite chunky. It's got a really sort of short front overhang and quite a wide stance. There's nothing in it that's going to offend you, but equally, it just looks quite neat and coherent. This is really good work from Honda.
Interestingly, Honda is introducing a new design language for its electric vehicles with white badging, details and new fonts, so electric Hondas will have the white bits. You can see it in the badges, the wheel centre caps and details here and on the back.
The writing across the back reminds me of a Mark I Honda Civic from back in the day, which is no bad thing. And actually, I really quite like the white bits because white always makes me think of clean, which is no bad thing for an EV. Slung underneath the car is a 68.8 kilowatt-hour battery, that's usable capacity, driving the front wheels and giving us a WLTP range of about 256 miles, which is a heck of a lot more than the very urban-centric Honda E. In fact, this car is more practical in every respect.
That system puts out 201 brake horsepower and 228 pounds-feet of torque, which you realise, if you're a bit geeky like me, is the same as pretty much all of these mid-size electric SUVs. It's like all the manufacturers got together and decided what would be the right power figure. Maybe they did. But that should clearly be plenty for a car of this size. Probably something in the region of 7.7 seconds to 62 miles an hour from rest. That's a guess, but probably not a bad one.
As far as charging goes, that's via this really quite handsome flap in the front of the car, which also has these little indicator lights which will tell you whether your charge is ongoing or there's a problem. So they'll go red if there's a problem and it'll be green if the car is charging. Now Honda hasn't actually quoted DC charging figures yet, but it has said that this car will go from 10 to 80% in roughly 45 minutes, which, given the size of the battery, would suggest somewhere in the region of 80 kilowatts DC, which is okay, if not particularly brilliant. What's really exciting is this, the inside. Now this is based on those new bones that I was talking about, and Honda calls it EN Architecture F, which is, again, with the catchy names Honda. But if I start with what's in front of me, it actually feels really nice. There seems to be plenty of space in the front seats, and then it's got a nicely slim steering wheel with some decent buttons on it. Normal conventional stalks and a big driver's display right in front of me. Then the bit that dominates it obviously is this 15.1 inch portrait display, and it's actually sectioned into 3 different bits. So on the top you've got the navigation, which always stays in that position. In the middle, you've got all the different widgets so that you can check your Wi-Fi hotspot, all of your different system updates, all of your apps, your Bluetooth audio, even the power flow for the EV. So look, it just gives you all these nice little graphics. And then on the bottom, it's got all the heating and cooling controls for the air conditioning system. I actually quite like this setup because it means that when you're driving, you know which bit of the screen you're going to be touching rather than flicking through various different menus. It seems to be a bit more intuitive. Then under there, you've got wireless charging, a couple of charging points, a couple of cup holders, and then a door bin here. So it's all quite conventional. One thing I did notice though, just underneath where you've got the push button controls for the gear selection, there's no storage bin under here, which you kind of expect in most EVs these days. Generally, I actually think it feels really nicely put together. There's some lovely underglow lighting, which gives it a bit of a fun look. There's a big panoramic sunroof, which is only standard on the top grade, but the material quality, the way that it's laid out, it feels quite simple, it feels quite chunky. I even like these little air vents that blow the air past your shoulders and around the cabin rather than into your face. It's really good work from Honda. In the back, there's plenty of leg and headroom, although this centre seat in the back of the rear bench is a little bit narrow. And the boot looks a bit like this, which is just lightly competitive. There is no frunk though, because that's where all the electricity is packaged. Though one feature I did like is this, it's a walk-away boot closing. So if you've got stuff in the boot, you press this button here, do what you need to do, and then the boot only shuts when you walk away. So, quick first impressions. I think with the Ny1, Honda is playing it slightly safe. Now, is that a bad thing? Personally, I think not. I think people who buy Hondas are looking for reliable, thoughtful engineering, and I think that's exactly what this car provides. There's nothing to blow your mind, but it won't let you down either. And don't forget, this is supposed to be a mainstream car, so it's got to be better than the very cool, but very urban-centric Honda E. Now, interestingly, Honda says that this car will have a refined ride and fun-to-drive dynamics, which traditionally Honda is really good at. And this car is supposed to start with a 4 in terms of price. So what I want to do is drive it before I decide whether it's worth the money.
And if you want to be the first to know when Electrifying.com gets its hands on the wheel of this newest of Honda EVs, then please do like and subscribe and switch your notifications on. And if you need to know more, then we're always around on the internet.